really tell you what happened on Thursday because the game was such a turd. We both kind of tuned out. I'm flying Ryan Gilchrist along with.
Tampa Motormouth Joel Verlin is, yeah, Ryan ended up getting the pick right, but that game was so absolutely god awful. You had Bryce Young looking to bounce back after struggling with the two pick sixes the previous week. Justin Fields, of course, missed his fourth straight game, and yeah, Mr. Bagent somehow won.
Yeah.
Okay.
Deonta Foreman was the only fantasy relevant player outside of some PPR guys. Thielen in PPR was fine. DJ Moore was okay in PPR. Um, it was just bad. Sanders is trash. Hubbard is not very good. This whole Panthers team outside of Adam Thielen has really been just horrible. And I stuck true to my word.
Yeah,
What I said when we made our picks is I was going to stop what I was doing and watch Loki. And that's exactly what I did because this game was awful. I was keeping an eye on the score and the plays on my phone and realized I missed absolutely nothing. And then after Loki, and that was fantastic. We won't get into it, but it was fantastic. And yeah, we came back to the game and pretty much immediately fell asleep.
Pretty much this tweet by Patrick Doherty at RonoPat pretty much sums up Thursday Night Football. Tweet is, this might legitimately be the most pointless football game I've ever watched.
Yeah, it's bad. It was bad. There's really no good thing to come out of it.
Yeah, and like you said, the pretty much the only viable fantasy asset was, of course, Deonta Foreman. You've got to love absolutely the downs here, not mine. So definitely credit to the writer on the QB list website. But 3 downs. Anyone not named Deontay Foreman? Down number 1. 2. America for having to watch the game in prime time. And 3 shorts. Winter is coming.
Yeah. This could have been used as cruel and unusual punishment in torture camps around the world for whoever has them, because this game was awful. If you are a Panthers or a Bears fan, I am very, very sorry for your existence. And yeah, you probably had better things to do on Thursday night than watch this game. Bears do win 16-13. Last minute field goal missed by the Panthers. Thank God no overtime was basically how that one ended up feeling. But yeah, it's hard to be excited for Thursday night football games to begin with because they tend to not be the best football because they are on a short week. But then you put the two of the worst 5 teams in football at the same time on Thursday night football, it gets so much worse. Then you have the first overall pick that can't get anything done and a undrafted backup in Bajan. It was just not a good situation for Thursday night football.
Yeah, thank God that's over with.
Yeah. Now we can move on to some other stuff, which Michael Thomas arrested for throwing a brick through
the car was blocking his driveway.
Yeah, it seems to be like there may be some overreaction, but at the same time, it was kind of justified at the same time. Kind of a weird situation there. Vikings not expected to activate Justin Jefferson for the game on Sunday. No surprise on that one.
Did you see the Bill Belichick weird ring video of him?
I didn't. I don't need to see a shirtless Bill Belichick. That's not something I'm interested in. Seahawks activated running back Kenny McIntosh. I don't think it's going to be a big deal, but whenever you activate a running back to the active roster, it could mean something for the role of the guys on there. Also, Arizona Cardinals activating James Conner. They're also going to have Kyler Murray back. So Cardinals offense getting back to pretty much full strength. Stephon Diggs popped up on the injury report. Will go into the game without a designation, so no problem there. T. Higgins is out. Jamar Chase is questionable. And two wide receivers have been elevated from the practice squad.
Yeah, because that's the key thing. If it was only one wide receiver elevated, you're thinking, well, okay, Higgins is out, but Jamar Chase more than likely can play. But when it's 2, that's definitely telling.
Yeah, Ravens rookie. Sorry, we'll stay on. Jamar Chase listed as questionable. He will work out on Sunday morning, and the team will make a decision if he can go at that time. So he is not out. He is definitely highly questionable in this one. Ravens rookie running back Keaton Mitchell had a big week last week, is expected to play. Stephon Diggs 100%, as he says. And I think that's the bulk of the news. That no Nico Collins, no Damian Pierce for the Texans. That's pretty big.
That's gonna be a rough game both in fantasy and in reality.
Yeah, Debo Samuel expected to return Sunday against the Jaguars, and yeah, that's where we're gonna leave that as we go into our picks. Which Joel is correct. I got the Thursday night turd right. I picked Chicago to win that game, and they did. And that will hopefully be the last time that game ever comes up in any way, shape, or form. All right, moving on to the second of the two Frankfurt games. Indianapolis going over with New England. New England is the technical home team. The Bill Belichick shirtless led New England last place in the AFC Patriots. For the Colts, you're going to play Jonathan Taylor. You're going to play Michael Pittman. I think Gardner Minshew could be an interesting streaming option this week because New England's been very bad. But for the Patriots, you're really only looking at Ramondre Stevenson and maybe a real desperation play in Zeke Elliott. Outside of that, maybe Demario Douglas if you're desperate at wide receiver. Hunter Henry as well because tight ends are garbage. New England worst in the AFC. Colts hovering just below 500. Who gets a win?
Yeah, this one is just oh boy, sort of an interesting start. Maybe, yeah, but most people are probably going to wake up. Oh yeah, there was a game, as the Colts seem like the easy pick, but Coach Belichick is really and literally, I think, backed up against a wall when we're going into the week, as both teams taken out of their routines. Weird butt start time. Colts defense is banged up. Yeah, headed for a definite trap game after beating the Panthers. As I think the Pats get a surprise, very ugly win here, and I'm banking, of course, on Belichick having not lost the locker room, as the man, of course, who grunted in response to being asked about his job security needs a German miracle in the worst spelled WURST way. As yeah, Colts are very vulnerable to the run, and Pats are slowly getting the run game going. I don't think it's going to be a pretty game. I don't think it's going to be one that everyone is going to be gravitating towards. But somehow I think the Patriots steal one here, especially with a report coming out that allegedly Robert Kraft could fire Bill Belichick if they lose the Germany game.
It's possible, and I think New England does lose that game. So we'll see. I don't know if they're going to fire Bill Belichick midseason. It seems kind of unlikely, but the Patriots would be 2-8, and a long trip back and a bye week would be the right time to do it. If they're going to do it in the middle of the season, I just think the Colts are too good of a team. New England has not shown up enough. They beat the Jets, who have not shown up enough either. And then the weird win over the Bills a few weeks back that really you struggle to comprehend how that's happening. All that being said, I'm taking the Colts in this one. Next up, a game that is probably going to be a pretty defensive game, all things considered, but a very good one here. And that is the Cleveland Browns going to Baltimore to play the Ravens. Both of these defenses have been just absolutely electric this season. For fantasy, I think Amari Cooper is your safest bet on the Browns. David Njoku at tight end is going to be an option as well. This is not a great matchup for Deshaun Watson with the four teams on bye, the Dolphins and the Chiefs and the Eagles being the headliners.
Yeah,
Rams as well. But
I love how they describe the bye teams this week are three good teams and the Rams.
Yeah, three good teams and the Rams is accurate. And all of that being said, I think it's going to be a real ugly game. And there's possibly weather in that area as well over the weekend. So I would say Njoku and Cooper for the Browns is about your best bet. Of course, Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson should be in your lineup. They are too good to bench. And then at the wide receiver and running back position, it's throw all the names in the hat, pull one out at random. We'll see who gets the most work. Justice Hill was the lead back last week in carries, not in yards, not in efficiency, but the lead back in carries. But Keaton Mitchell was much more explosive, and Gus Edwards had 2 touchdowns on 5 carries. So fantasy options on this one, probably fairly limited, but big game for Cleveland, who is still battling in that division. Baltimore 7-2. If Baltimore wins this game, gets a little further ahead of Cleveland, it makes that divisional win for Cleveland for the the full season that much more unlikely. Who gets the win?
Yeah, Ravens are just throttling teams recently, leaving behind the wreckage of teams like the Lions and the Seahawks. But even after having beat the Browns soundly last month, are the Browns looking ahead to Thursday night football date against the Bengals? They lost to the Colts, healthy defense at the time, and Steelers also good defense, as the Browns have shown that they are adept at the D in 23. I'm picking the Ravens to stumble just a little bit here in Week 10, and I think the Ravens tend to run a lot of man-to-man coverage. Watson better against man-to-man. As you said, it's going to be an ugly game. I don't think this is going to be a score fest by any stretching of the imagination. I'm leaning Browns.
I'm leading Ravens. I mean, the Ravens have looked dominant in the last few weeks. They throttled the Seahawks and they throttled the Lions. And those are two, the Seahawks maybe to a lesser extent, but those are two very good teams in the NFC. And they made them look like they just were not threats. Yes, Baltimore can stumble and stub their toe. That's why I picked against them last week. It did not happen. Baltimore at home, it's going to be a tough fight because Cleveland's going to come in with a lot to play for and a very good defense. I expect this to be like a 17-13 style of game, but I'm going to put my faith in the better quarterback and the better coach, and I'm going to take the Ravens in this one. So that's 3 for 3 disagreements so far. As we move on to the 4th game on the docket, that is Houston at Cincinnati. Of course, CJ Stroud's explosion last week has him on the minds of fantasy players. He may be a good start. It's not as cut and dry as it seems. For Houston, there will be no Dameon Pierce, so that means Devin Singletary will be the starter in the backfield. No Nico Collins means Tank Dell, Noah Brown, even Robert Woods can get more involved than Dalton Schultz. Some names you need to keep in mind. None of them are must starts in this one. Cincinnati's got a very good defense this year, but all of them at least need to be on your radar. I personally would not be wanting to play CJ Stroud in a single quarterback league this week. Personal opinion there. For the Bengals, Joe Mixon has to be in your lineup. You can run against Houston. He should have a very good day. And if Jamar Chase plays, he's even more of a smash play than normal. But without T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd becomes an interesting flex emergency option because when he's gotten the number 2 role in this offense, he's typically produced. And of course, Joe Burrow, you can't bench him. He's too good. Might not be the best game because you typically run on Houston. We saw this last year as they were the worst matchup for quarterbacks, but Houston still has that deep. I mean, Baker Mayfield looked great last week, even in the loss. So we move to the picks. Joel, who do you got?
Yeah, with all the concern for the injuries with Higgins and possibly even Jamar Chase, true star for the Bengals really needs to show up, and that would be the Bengals defense, who held the Seahawks, 49ers, and Bears to an average of 16 points, as you mentioned, of course. Nico and Pierce out, and of course, Higgins and possibly Jamar Chase out. So, yeah, it's going to be a very, very bare fantasy feast and even a reality feast. So this game, with how the Texans are 13th in the NFL with points allowed and 9th for total yards allowed per game, I think I'm picking the Bengals. I tend to think that they're the better unit. They've really been on a roll recently, and even though the Texans did what they did last week to my Bucks, they are still a very one-dimensional team.
I'm taking the Bengals as well. CJ Stroud's had a few very big games, all of them at home. This game being in Cincinnati against a very good team offensively and defensively. I don't think this is where Houston shows up like they did against Tampa Bay or Pittsburgh early in the season. I think this is kind of what we're going to see from Houston. Probably a little bit better or a lot better at home, not so good on the road as this team grows up, because it's a very young team, grows up, grows together, and tries to figure it out. I think this is going to be a real bad learning experience for them, and I think the Bengals take care of business fairly easily. Moving on to probably the game of the week, San Francisco at Jacksonville. Pretty much if you've got them, start them in this one. Brock Purdy, the Jags have a good defense, but it's not as good against the pass. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle have been good all season long, and Deebo Samuel coming back. All of them are good options in this one. For Jacksonville, Travis Etienne's been a top flight running back all season long. No need to doubt that now. Christian Kirk should be a good option in this one. Calvin Ridley's been very disappointing all season, but they're going to need to throw the ball to beat the San Francisco 49ers in this one. And Evan Ingram will be in at tight end. And then even though it hasn't been a great season for Trevor Lawrence, you got to think this is going to be a game he's got to show up big or they're going to struggle. Jacksonville at home, San Francisco coming off the bye, but also 3 straight losses prior to that. Who gets the win?
Yeah, right now you're looking at San Francisco really getting bolstered, of course, with the Chase Young trade. They definitely needed their defense to have some reinforcements. And then they're getting Deebo back, so that is huge as their offense has stumbled a step or two in recent days. As let me tell you, they beefed up their D. They're getting Deebo back. I really don't think that there is any way that they can lose 4 in a row if they want to stay in the Super Bowl talk this year. Although, for terms of fantasy, can Calvin Ridley please show up this week? That would be freaking fantastic. I'm picking the 49ers.
All right, I am on Jacksonville. I have seen this team come back from their first 2 weeks where they looked completely lost and be a dominant team in a lot of ways. San Francisco's defense has been a little less than what we expected at the beginning of the season. And I just think Jacksonville at home is going to be a little too much. Could be the statement game for Jacksonville. Jacksonville 6-2, battling for the number 1 overall seed. And a win over San Francisco is a signature win at home. Cross-country trip in the 1 o'clock window is tough for West Coast teams. I think Jacksonville gets this one done in what could be a very entertaining, high-scoring game, even though both teams have fairly good defenses. Next up, New Orleans at Minnesota. Joshua Dobbs was the hero of the week last week, coming off the bench when he didn't know the names of his starters. His offensive line didn't know his cadences because he wasn't supposed to play last week. Gets the job done, gets the win over Atlanta. New Orleans beats a very bad Chicago Bears team. So both teams coming off a win. Both teams 5-4. So a lot to play for between these two. One of the more impactful games of the week. For the Saints, you're going to play Kamara. You're going to play Olave. You probably should be playing Taysom Hill at this point. Beyond that, Shaheed should be an option in deeper leagues or flex consideration because he's got the big play potential. And Derek Carr, again, no Mahomes, no Hurts, no Tua. Interesting option at quarterback would be Derek Carr this week. For the Vikings, Alexander Mattison is the only show in town in the backfield, but this is not a good matchup. The Saints have a good defense. Dobbs, I don't think is a good streaming option. And I think Addison and Hawkinson are your best 2 bets in the passing game for the Vikings. 2 5-4 teams. Very big game for both of them. Who gets the W?
As the Saints defense might be too much for the astronaut to handle this week. Too many options for the Saints. Hill running wild, AK, even Olave finally heating back up. I'm picking Saints if Double J were back. I might be tempted to go, but not this week for week 10. Picking the Saints to go marching out of this week with a win.
I'm taking the Saints as well, mostly because I'm trusting the Saints defense more than the Vikings defense. I think Alvin Kamara has a much better game. Maybe this is finally the breakout for Chris Olave, who got in the end zone recently for the first time all year. And honestly, Josh Dobbs, He's been a very good quarterback, a very good story the last few weeks and this year, but he is not as good of a quarterback as Derek Carr. And Derek Carr has finally started to figure things out, at least in the fantasy end of things. So I'm going to take New Orleans as well. Moving on to Green Bay at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a surprising 5-3 team, even though their best options are Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson in the passing game. For fantasy, you're not playing Kenny Pickett. George Pickens has kind of fallen off a cliff since Deontay Johnson has come back. And even Jalen Warren is not super encouraging. For the Packers, hard to recommend any of these fantasy plays. I mean, Dobbs and Watson are at least in consideration. And then depending on your situation in the backfield, Aaron Jones could be an option as well. But Pittsburgh, if you're going to beat them, it's going to be through the passing game. So this could be a good week for Romeo Dobbs. Pittsburgh, in the same situation as Cleveland, the more you fall behind Baltimore now, the harder it's going to be to catch them later. A team like Green Bay has been very disappointing all season long. But is there an upset brewing here?
Yeah, Steelers somehow keep winning, but with Aaron Jones fully operational and Coach Tomlin dealing with the pebble in his shoe known as George Pickens, I think the straight edge has to go to the team without any drama. I'm not loving it, but oh boy, I'm picking the Packers as Steelers have a soft run game, and that might come back to bite them you know where this week as you tend to like a rookie QB off of bye. George Pickens had issues after the game, as we know, because of his lack of targets. Of course, made it all public. Preemie, Instagram, blah, 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 blah. I know that Mike Tomlin is the master of dealing with distractions, but you also have Pitt missing two key linemen on D. You have to ask, is Pittsburgh a false favorite? I'm going Packers.
I'm taking Pittsburgh. I haven't seen consistency out of Green Bay. They beat a Rams team with Brett Rippon at quarterback who couldn't get anything going. And it's just hard to feel a lot of confidence in the Green Bay Packers. And for whatever reason, Pittsburgh does not have losing seasons. Mike Tomlin is still the head coach. And I just think if they're going to get a win and keep up with Baltimore, they got to beat a team like Green Bay when they come to their house. And I think that's what gets done. Next,
I'm either having a fantastic week or a 2-win week.
it's possible. I mean, we've done this before. We've had very different picks, and it ends up working out where we both miss the same amount, and it just kind of works out to be a wash. Hopefully, because I know that's not updated, but I'm now with the game last night, Thursday night, 14 games back, so not far off of that. All that being said, I need as many wins as I can get. Next up, Tennessee at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay coming off a very good offensive game and a bad defensive game against Houston. Tennessee coming off of a disappointing loss against Pittsburgh. Tennessee has been much better at home than they have been on the road, and this game is in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has a good run defense, but you cannot and should not bench Derrick Henry in any way, shape, or form. Chigakonkwo and DeAndre Hopkins are definitely options for your lineup this week. For Tampa, another bad matchup for running backs. Rachaad White, probably not given the same grace as Derrick Henry in a bad matchup, but he's been getting a lot better and involved in the passing game, so still an option. Evans and Godwin as well. This could be a sneaky good place for Baker Mayfield and Cade Otton as well. I don't think Will Levis is a great start this week. Rookie quarterbacks on the road, not going to be very consistent. He wasn't good against Pittsburgh. We saw Tampa's defense not be great last week against Houston, but Houston is with CJ Stroud and much better weapons than Tennessee has. All of that being said, Tampa Bay, 4-game losing streak. Tennessee, struggling a little bit. Who gets the win?
Titans have a better two-pronged rushing attack than the Bucks do with White, with both teams' seasons teetering on the edge of the abyss. The coaching edge has to go to Vrabel here, especially when you saw Todd Bowles with the whole timeout thing, that if you just run down the clock, they would have won the freaking game. But no, let's do the timeout. Oh boy. So, yeah, I always thought Arthur Smith had the worst week, but after I saw that, I'm going, okay, yeah, we're going to have to lean towards Coach Bowles there. As, yeah, let me tell you, when Mayfield has to depend upon Cade Otton, You know that Texas D was working hard for that money last week. Bucks have a better pass attack when it's working, but Titans have a better rushing attack. I think the loss last week had to take the wins away from some of the Bucks' sails big time. And the Titans, yeah, I know they're rough. I know they can have those games that you're going, was this the team that one time led the division and actually was a force in the playoffs? But as much as it hurts me to say it, I think the Titans hand the Buccos another sobering loss in Week 10.
We are all over not agreeing this week. I'm taking Tampa Bay, which listen, I saw what Will Levis looked like last week. The win loss record between home and road splits is definitely noticeable. So we have to assume that it might continue this way. And if Will Levis is not good, that Tampa Bay defense is not as bad as they were looked against Houston. And if they can shut down Derrick Henry, it could be a very long day for the Titans offense. I think Tampa Bay can get the offense going a little bit better. So I'm going to take Tampa Bay to win this game, as we are now up to 5 or 6 disagreements on the week through the first 8 games. And there's a good chance we have a disagreement in this next one as well. Atlanta at Arizona. Atlanta is coached by an idiot, but Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, all in consideration, and Taylor Heineke. I'm actually playing Taylor Heineke over Deshaun Watson in a spot start where I don't have Jalen Hurts this week because the matchup is much, much better. So all of those are very solid options. Jonnu Smith has to be mentioned as well for whatever reason. Arizona, getting back James Conner, getting back Kyler Murray. This offense should look a lot better. That also makes things better for Trey McBride and Hollywood Brown. Could even bring Michael Wilson, if he plays, he's questionable, into some relevance as well. I don't know what the chemistry is going to be like between those two, though, as a rookie and a guy back for the first time since injury. This is a game where Arizona, as a 1-7 team, competed very well behind Joshua Dobbs. Now they're getting full health from Kyler Murray, full health from James Conner. You got to think that helps the offense. Atlanta's been very inconsistent because of head coaching decisions that are dumb, but they've been very inconsistent. So, who gets the win here?
I have a feeling I know which way you're going to go, but even with the much ballyhooed return of Murray to the fold, the Falcons should be able to bumble their way through. Look forward to the more crazy player usage by Arthur Smith. Posts on social media asking, "Where's Bijan and why isn't he playing more?" And more wisdom from Smith after they get a win against the abysmal Cards. And I'll tell you, if you see a link about a post where it has Arthur Smith explaining for 5 minutes why he didn't use Bijan Robinson more in that week, that infuriated many of us fantasy managers, I'll give you a tip: don't bother watching it because you'll want 5 minutes of your life back.
Yeah. So, who are you taking here?
Taking the Falcons.
All right. Yeah, we disagree once again. I'm taking Arizona. This has been a very competitive team in most of their games, even with James Conner, even with Joshua Dobbs.
They did smack around Dallas that one night.
They did smack around Dallas, and they were competitive with several teams in the process of getting to this 1-win record they're at right now. They're not getting number 1 overall pick. That's going to go to Chicago via Carolina, it looks like, almost for sure. Kyler Murray is too good of a quarterback to keep them down that much. And you got to think, Kyler Murray, if he doesn't come back and play well, this is his audition for a new coaching staff. There is no guarantee that he's going to be the quarterback long-term for Arizona, so he's going to come in with a lot of motivation to play well in the last 8 or 9 games for the Cardinals.
Win the game. You don't play to just play it.
So, and you know what? If he wins, they might give Kyler Murray more Modern Warfare 3 time, which came out yesterday. So a lot to play for, and I think he gets the job done. I kind of think it's like when the Raiders got rid of McDaniels. There is a dead cat bounce, a burst of energy coming through this locker room that wasn't there before. And this one is because of the return of 2 of their best players on offense. Defense has been good. Defense has been very good against the run for Arizona. So keep that in mind if you have Bijan or Algier in this one. And I just have a funny feeling at home, Arizona's going to get it done. Not my spiciest pick of the week, by the way. Next up, foreshadowing. Next up, Detroit at the Los Angeles Chargers. Detroit You're playing Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're playing Laporta. You're playing the returning David Montgomery, and you probably need to play Jahmyr Gibbs as well, who, if you have Gibbs, you are hoping acquired at least a little bit more of a role while Montgomery was out that will translate to when he is back. This
Can
should be
James,
a good week for Jared Goff at quarterback as well as the Chargers
can
defense is not
Jameson
great.
Williams finally show up?
No. Do not play Jameson Williams. If you do, you better be in a 32-team league because it's very bad. For the Chargers, you're going to play Herbert. You're going to play Keenan Allen. You're going to play Austin Eckler. Outside of that, you can play the dart throw on Parham or Everett or Quentin Johnson if you really feel froggy. But it's really going to be through their big stud players that the predictable fantasy output is going to come from. The Chargers have fought their way back to 4-4 after a very bad start where they were 0-3. The Lions still top of their division, but they still need to get wins because suddenly Minnesota is hard charging, even though they lost Kirk Cousins. Who gets the win here?
The Chargers are coming off of a short week. Lions are well rested, coming off of the bye. Could have some nice offense in this game when you're thinking about Herbert hopefully coming back to optimal, and Lions just always tend to lion unless you have the odd week that you're just going, well, what happened there? But I think the Lions are definitely better on both sides of the ball. While this might not be a mauling, I think the Lions can definitely get her done, and beat the Chargers, who have definitely looked mortal at times this year.
All right, we're going to agree on this one. I'm taking Detroit as well, mostly because of the injuries to like Mike Williams, to Joshua Palmer that are just going to hamstring this
And
offense.
even Austin Eckler seemed lost a step or two this year.
Yeah, a couple touchdowns last week, but really didn't get anything going. Yes, it was against the Jets, but you can run on the Jets a little bit. So I just don't think the Chargers are quite up to the level of Detroit. So I'm going to take Detroit in this one. Next up, a 17.
Breaking news. We actually agree on something. Holy crap.
I have a very strong feeling we're going to agree on the next game as well. As Dallas hosts the Giants. Reminder, the Dallas Cowboys beat the Giants 40-0 when the Giants were at full strength.
Have you seen the Cowboys spread? Oh
17 points as of the last I heard.
That is a freaking college football spread, kids.
Yeah, I think it's a 38-point over-under with a 17-point spread, which means the implied total is somewhere around 27.5 to 10.5. Not good for the Giants. Tommy, don't call me Danny DeVito, is the starting quarterback for the Giants. So if it's not Saquon Barkley, it is not in your lineup.
They should call it the New York. They've been ravaged.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley is the only Giant you can realistically play. Now, Wandale, if you're desperate, okay, sure. Hopefully he gets something done, but it's not going to be great. Dallas's defense.
You know a team is not good when you're listening to a national show and one of the questions is, will the Giants score a touchdown?
I don't think they do. I don't think they do in this one, not offensively. Again, 40-0 with Daniel Jones and the rest of a solid offense not performing week number one. Dallas's defense is probably the best play in this game. They went for a big total the first time, and I got to think it's not getting any better this time with the backup quarterback. Tony Pollard is probably your best offensive bet in this one because the game can get away from the Giants. They could have to just run out the clock. Pollard might get a lot of usage in this game. Yes, Dak. Yes, CeeDee Lamb. Yes, Jake Ferguson. All should be considered, but be warned. This could be this game's over at the beginning of the second quarter, and the offense is done. So if CeeDee Lamb does not get a touchdown early, he might not get one at all. The offense may go through the ground game. Just keep that in mind. Guys like Rico Dowdle this week could be interesting DFS plays because he might get the entire second half against a defense that is given up. I guess I have to ask the question, who gets the win? Like, I need to ask the question.
Yeah. I'm picking the team from as pretty much by the second quarter it's going to be stop. He's already dead. Not from the Giants. Yeah, picking Cowboys.
Yeah. The real question is, how many points does Dallas cover the over by or cover the spread by? Because it's going to be ugly. I think if you're playing against Dallas's defense, you just hope that they hand the ball to Saquon Barkley a lot and that they don't have a lot of turnovers or sacks allowed because they're not going to score many points to knock that defense down. Moving on to another game that could be fairly interesting. Seattle hosting the Washington Commanders. Washington has been very inconsistent. Brian Robinson's been great or terrible. McLaurin's had a pretty good season, but other guys like Gibson and Dotson have just kind of popped up and been great and then all of a sudden disappeared. Or been good and disappeared in some instances. Logan Thomas, the tight end, is a consideration as well. For Seattle, they played Baltimore and Cleveland the last 2 weeks. They've looked like they've played two very good defenses, so don't get too upset about how it's looked. But you have to have a little bit of concern because Kenneth Walker hasn't been great the last few weeks. DK Metcalf has been on a milk carton all season long. And Tyler Lockett, even though he's a solid wide receiver 3, has been very boom or bust, all of which should be considered for your lineup. Washington's defense is not as good as the last two, so maybe a good bounce back game for Seattle. Seattle was leading the division. They are now tied with San Francisco at 5-3. Washington still hanging around in that playoff race for the wild card. So a big game for both teams. It is week 10. We got to start thinking about that playoff positioning and seeding and who gets a win over who. This could be a wild card determining game down the line. Who gets the win?
Seahawks are still recovering from the Week 9 decimation. And let me tell you, while the Commanders have not won against any good teams, the Seahawks have beaten the Browns and the Lions. But Geno Smith has the NFL's lowest completion in the red zone. And I think that flummoxes them again for this weekend. I think the Commanders steal one away from Seattle.
I'm taking the home team. I'm taking Seattle in this one. They played Baltimore and Cleveland the last 2 weeks. They stood toe-to-toe with Cleveland, lost that one very, very late. And then Baltimore ran all over. But Baltimore's been embarrassing teams all season long. So I'm not putting a whole lot of stock in that. I think this could be a little bit of a get-right game for specifically the running game of Walker and Charbonnet, depending on how they want to break that down. But Washington's defense, we saw against some other teams, gives up a lot of points. So this could be a good week for a lot of options. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, hopefully in the passing game. I don't think Geno's going to have the biggest game we've seen him have, but I think he's going to be good enough to get the win and good enough to make those fantasy options at wide receiver at least viable. If not good, viable for this week. I'm going to take Seattle. So let's see. Chicago game, Indianapolis game, Baltimore game, Jacksonville, San Francisco, Pittsburgh, Green Bay, Tampa, Arizona, and now Seattle. That's 8 different picks through 12 games. This is possibly our biggest discrepancy so far.
One of us is going to have a good week. One of us is not going to have a good week.
I mean, this could be a Joel slams the door and runs away because he's already up 15 before the
could also be Joel gets the door slammed on him.
This could be the door getting kicked right back open. We move to the Sunday night game, which can't possibly be worse than Thursday night, but I have a feeling it's going to try. The Jets and Las Vegas, they go to Sin City to play the Raiders. Oh, boy. Breece Hall, Josh Jacobs. Yes, you're playing them. Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams. Trust the talent. You're going to play them. Temper your expectations. It's going to be Zach Wilson versus Aiden O'Connell.
Boy.
That is what they expected. They didn't expect Rodgers and Jimmy G. They expected Aiden O'Connell and Zach Wilson when they scheduled this game.
Sunday night in the XFL.
Yeah, it's going to be a rough one. Vegas, though, coming in high after that McDaniels firing, they got a dominant win over the Giants. Maybe it's a New York thing, and they can wrap things up against the Jets. But it's worth mentioning, Zach Wilson in prime time has been much better than Zach Wilson any other time. He's like the inverse of the Kirk Cousins legend. With that said, who gets the win?
Short week for the Jets. You have a absolutely horrendous performance, yet somehow they are favorites. Raiders might have lost the ding dong, the witch is dead boost but I think they still have enough of an offense to get past a absolutely putrid Wilson and the New York Jets. Picking the Raiders.
We're gonna agree on this one. I think the dead cat balance for the Raiders continues. I do think they are the better team in this one. And frankly, the defense looked as good as it's looked in a long time last week. I think they keep it up against a bad Jets offense and get the win. And we move to Monday night because Thursday and Sunday were so good. Let's keep a matchup on the board for Monday night as well. Now,
Was
that
was,
being said,
was that sarcasm or
this
yeah?
is definitely the best primetime game of the week. It is Denver at Buffalo. Buffalo has been concerning. Their defense is very badly injured. Their offense has not looked as in sync as we would like it to be, but that still means you're playing Diggs, you're playing Allen, you're going to play Dalton Kincaid. Whether or not you play Gabe Davis is, I don't know if you saw the Gabe Davis troll meter. If he started in over 30% of leagues, he completely busts. If he's played in under 20, he has a great game. So pay attention to sleeper. I'm going to check. Because I know where he is in the league. I'll look this up. Where Gabe Davis's percentages for start, that might determine if you should or should not
Will
play
he
him.
get you 20 or will he get you 0.02?
Well, in sleeper, he's 68% started. It was an ESPN stat, so harder to find there, but I can find it. That being said, you're still playing your studs from Buffalo. We'll see if Leonard Fournette plays in this game. Remember, they signed him last week. But for Denver, Cortland Sutton, Javonte Williams should be in your starting lineup. Russell Wilson's an interesting play here. Remember, Buffalo's defense is severely injured. No Milano, a couple guys on the back end of the secondary have been beat up. Von Miller hasn't looked 100% for a little bit of time now. So all of that being said, Russell Wilson could be a good play. Jerry Judy is a dart throw. And yeah. Anyways, Buffalo, they're behind Miami. Miami's on bye. Buffalo's bye is a few weeks down the road. This could get them even in the win column. However, Denver, coming off of back-to-back wins and a bye week, they vanquished the losing streak against Kansas City. 2 weeks to prepare. I think this is going to be a very interesting game on Monday night. Bills are a 7-point favorite. Who gets the win?
As the Bills have looked very mortal recently, they lost to the Pats, barely escaped the Bucks. I mean, if Chris Godwin had turned around a couple nanoseconds sooner, they would have lost to the Bucks on Thursday Night Football, and then dropped one to the Bengals on Sunday Night Football. The Bengals
No
have been,
shame in losing to the Bengals, though.
yeah, but almost losing to the Bucks and losing to the Pats. Definite shame, I think.
Yeah.
There, call me crazy here, but I think the Broncos and their improved defense, which stunned the living snot out of the Chiefs. Of course, I realize that Pat Mahomes was fighting the flu and you had the cold weather, but still, the improved D, I think, I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm crazy, but I think the Broncos can steal a win away from the Bills and send them tumbling to 5-5, just with some of the crazy games we have seen in a league that has definitely had more parity this year. I'm picking the Broncos.
Well, we agree on this one. This was going to be the spiciest pick I thought we were going to have all week. But Denver's defense has been much improved. If you look at their season-long stats, you got to remember that 70-point debacle against Miami is always going to weigh down their numbers. You pull that out, this is actually a pretty solid defense, especially the last few weeks. They shut down Pat Mahomes twice, even though they didn't win both games. And they were much better in the game between both Chiefs games as well. I think this defense does much better. And I think Buffalo is just not quite healthy enough. If this offense can get going for Denver, could be a very big upset win.
When you lose to the Patriots with how they have played this year, that is a big litmus test.
I mean, divisional matchups are what they are. Bill Belichick is very, very good against Buffalo. Buffalo is very good against Miami. Miami is very good against New England right now. It could be something weird like that where it's just they got their number, but it's concerning. You struggled against the Bucks. You didn't look good against it. Like Cincinnati never looked threatened in that game, even though it was a 6-point final as far as the difference went. They just didn't look threatened in that one. Buffalo has not really looked good since the week 4 domination over Miami. They beat the Giants 14-9 in the last few. Like, this is a team that just
And
you want to see them win.
they
You want to
slammed
see
the
them
door on the
perform.
Dolphins, and that's when they looked invulnerable. But more and more mortal in recent weeks.
Yeah. The injuries to the defense cannot be understated. I know Josh Allen's going to be a good play, and Stephon Diggs should have a decent game, but I just have a funny feeling that Denver's going to be, at the very least, uncomfortably close in this one, and that means an upset is definitely possible. So
Bet I surprised you with that.
I thought you were going to be on Buffalo because the smart money is to pick the 7-point home favorite, but something about the way these two teams have been playing, it seems like they're going in opposite directions.
This year has just been crazy.
This has been one of the toughest years for picks. We do have 8 different picks in 14 games, so plenty of things can go right or wrong for either one of us. When you picked Denver, I was very tempted to say, you know what, let me just go with Buffalo. But at the end of the day, I do believe Denver has a shot to take this one down. And who would have thought that 3-4 weeks ago? All right, that is our pick. So we're going to go to our final thoughts, and we'll start with Joel.
And my final thought is, if I am wrong with my pick, and in fact the Colts do win, and money just seems to be on them, will we see a very abrupt end to the Bill Belichick era in Foxborough, Gillette Stadium, and for the New England Patriots? Or will they let him finish out the season and then relieve him of his duties on Black Monday? Because I know the Patriots have been absolutely god awful. I'm sure a lot of people have been calling for Belichick to be canned, which just brings the question: what are all those Super Bowls that he won worth the dignity to at least ride out the rest of the season? Granted, the Patriots have been super suck putrid this year, one of the worst performances I think we've ever seen from a Patriots team, but I think Belichick at least deserves the dignity to finish out the season, and that's my final thought.
Yeah, and I think you will get that. I do think a lot of the problem with the Patriots is the draft and the scouting process. I mean, you saw them pick guys like N'Keal Harry and Mac Jones and some others that just have not panned out. They've reached at times when they're like, oh, well, it's the Patriots. They got away with it. But once Brady left, the picks went sour and things just went downhill very, very quickly. My final thought is going to be, for the love of God, NFL, get the Jets out of primetime. Get Chicago out of primetime. I understand for Thanksgiving we have a Lions-Packers game. We don't want to see the Packers because they're crap. But the Jets are on primetime, week 17. They're in Black Friday's game against the Dolphins in a couple of weeks. And for the love of God, I don't want to see the Jets until Aaron Rodgers comes back, which I don't think will be this year. At this point, I think the Jets can lose a couple games, get smacked by Miami on Black Friday, and just be out of it. And they say, you know what, Aaron, let's play for 24. Let's not push it. You go out there and you get hurt again, it could be the end of the career. Take your time. Get the bad teams out of prime time. I understand when the season started, you might have had a different viewpoint. You thought, oh, Justin Fields going to be a great. Remember, he was the most bet MVP preseason was Justin Fields. Then you have the number 1 pick, Bryce Young, who was supposed to be the Steph Curry of football. I understand the thought, but you also have to understand it was a team that had the number 1 overall pick last year and a team that traded up to get it because they were not all that good. Just please get the bad teams out of prime time. Put them in the 1 o'clock or the 4 o'clock window where they belong, where we cannot watch them if we choose not to watch them. And if you have the ability to flex out a game like this, don't forget, just do it. That's my final thought.
Yeah, because the Lions and Chargers would have made, for example, a better
San Francisco, Jacksonville, Cleveland, Baltimore, Houston, Cincinnati would have at least been interesting.
Commanders and Seahawks, you might have argued, could make them better.
There's not many games. I mean, Arizona, Atlanta would have been interesting in its own right. You got Bijan, you got the return to Kyler Murray. Like, most of the games this week would have been more interesting to watch.
49ers and Jaguars.
49ers and Jaguars, I think, is going to be the game of the week. But New Orleans, Minnesota, 2-5-4 teams. Green Bay and Pittsburgh. Okay, no, we're not doing that one. But again, not Dallas and the Giants. We already saw that once. Washington, Seattle, Detroit, LA, Atlanta, Arizona. Honestly, every other game on the docket looks better if you take out Dallas and the Giants, because that's going to be a stomping, and Green Bay, Pittsburgh, just because I don't have a lot of faith in Green Bay. It's one of the worst games of the week, and it is shoved down our throat in prime time. And for the love of God, please stop doing this to us.
The other thing that bonus final thought that I want to do is channeling a little bit of The Rock. Every time I hear that stupid Shopify ad, I want to take that bell, shine it up real nice, and everything else assumed that that The Rock says that. I promise I won't repeat, but yeah, that's just one of those commercials that you get so tired of hearing.
Yeah, commercials suck. Yeah, that's our time. We are a sports podcast that refused to watch Thursday Night Football because it was a turd. All of that being said, Week 10 looks like it's got one of the better dockets on the season so far. Some pretty big buys, so keep it in mind. We're on the playoff stretches for a lot of fantasy teams. Week 10, it's time to go. I mean, I've got every team behind me still has a shot at the playoffs, including that 3-6 one at the top. If everything goes right this week, I could be fourth place in that league. It's weird.
Entering on the abyss here, sixth place, most of my teams, and with the way my seasons have been going, it's probably into the abyss.
I mean, every team has a shot still. It's still 4 full weeks. Well, actually 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. If any of these teams behind me win 5 in a row, they're in the playoffs. And Joel, I'm guaranteeing most of your teams are in that same boat, if not even easier to make it. So don't give up. Keep fighting. Keep making your waiver moves, and hope for the best, because there are a lot of teams that they just barely get in, and then they get hot in the playoffs, and they win the whole thing.
As a great Starship captain once said, never give up, never surrender.
And on that inspirational note, I am flying Ryan Gilchrist along with
Tampa Motormouth, Joel Verlin.
Next week will be a little bit of a different schedule because I will be in Buffalo to watch the Jets in person for some reason. We expected this when we booked the tickets to be Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen. Unfortunately, it won't be. But I'll be out of town from Friday till about the Monday after, so we'll do our podcast in advance of that trip. So we'll have everything done probably by Thursday, and then back to normal pretty much the rest of the season, Thanksgiving being a little funky as well. Anyways, that's